I'm Ted Gunderson, former head of the FBI in Southern California. I furnished considerable information to B.J. Wagener. If you want the full story, you want to know what's going on, watch B.J.
First
Wagener.
guest here today, Jack Alpan, dentist and doctor, teacher, author, retired. He's got some comments. And Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What have you got for us today?
Well, this is a consummation of 38 years of research. It's the hidden code in the United States Constitution. And on the top of it, it says, "Who are we the people?"
Right.
And in my book, The Hidden Code to the U.S. Constitution, the answer is given. It's not what you may think of it what you think are we the people, based on what you've just been saying. And we the people did not write the U.S. Constitution in 1787. In fact, the second question on the DVD says, "Why was the U.S. Constitution written in secret proceedings in 1787?
Well, I think that's because the founders feared the people might be upset if they knew what was being written. They were afraid the rabble-rousers would overthrow them before they could establish anything. Am I wrong?
No, you're wrong. The reason that it was done in secret is because there was something hidden that they didn't want the American people to know about the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution was written mostly by lawyers. Lawyers who were very well educated at Princeton and Yale and all the Eastern colleges way back in 1787.
The Brahmins.
And their goal and their purpose, which was the secret, that's why I have on here top secret on there. Their goal was to create a document that would convert the men, women, and children who in nature are created under the laws of nature by God, for those who believe in God, and with unalienable rights, as we have come to understand that through the ages. Those are God-given or natural law rights given to man. Well, that's what those people had in the colonies after they kicked King George out of the colonies. They fought 90,000 out of 3 million. That's only 3% of the population fought against the rule of the king, of the monarchy.
Most of them sat on their hands and tried to stay out of it, didn't they?
Most of them were still sympathetic and really didn't want to fight against the king. Even the leaders, really, the so-called founders of our country, really did not want to break away from England. They wanted to resolve their differences. But it was Thomas Paine, who was an Englishman, who wrote the original Declaration of Independence, which was then modified by Jefferson and actually emasculated to a great degree. But he was the one that inspired those few 90,000 people to take arms and put themselves in harm's way to establish a new form of what he had talked about in the Declaration of Independence as self-government versus being ruled by a monarch. And so they won their battle, and from 1783, the Treaty of Peace was signed, and from that year until 1787, only 4 years, the men, women, and children were sovereign. And in my book, I spelled the word sovereign, S-O-V-R-A-N, to distinguish it from the word sovreigen, which is defined in all the dictionaries as a ruler or a British coin. But those men were sovereign, and they had inalienable God-given rights that could not be taken away. But what the U.S. Constitution was, when the U.S. Constitution was written, it was written in secret proceedings because those lawyers wanted to convert men, women, and children created under natural law into citizens of, the word of is defined as derived from, created by the state, citizens of the United States of America. So that document was a legal law conversion of inalienable, sovereign human beings, self-ruling men, women, and children, converting them into citizen subject slaves.
Only now they were subject to Congress and the President instead of King George.
Right. So basically all they did was change who was ruling them. Okay? They thought they were going to rule themselves. Well, John Adams never, ever believed that the people could rule themselves. In his article that he wrote in defense of the Constitution, he said the people are not capable of ruling themselves. And a lot of those people who wrote that Constitution felt the same way. They had no faith in we, the people, as you think of it, as most Americans think of it. The we, the people, are the people who wrote it. We, the people who wrote this document, will do these things for our best interests. It has nothing to do with you and me. That's why it's a secret. Okay, that's the secret code. Okay, so the reason I wrote this book is because in 1992 I got involved with Richard McDonald here in California, who started a movement to restore citizens' rights and states' rights. And he was teaching people from coast to coast that it's better to be a state citizen than it is to be a federal citizen, because the 14th Amendment converted state citizens into federal citizens of subject status, whereas state citizens were sovereign. Well, when I started writing my book, originally I started writing my book and I entitled it A Matter of Status. Because when I started writing my book, I immediately turned to the law dictionaries used by our Supreme Court to define the words used in the Constitution. And I looked up the word status. The word status is defined as that condition in which you are found in society which makes you liable to pay taxes. Now, Aaron Russo just recently made a film that says that that there is no law that requires an American citizen to file and pay taxes. Well, that is not true. Because when the U.S. Constitution was written, okay, it created a citizen subject slave from a sovereign man, woman, and child. It was a legal document that made a legal conversion in law. And so from the day that the U.S. Constitution was written, there has never been an American citizen who calls himself a citizen of, created by the United States, which is a corporation. There never has been a sovereign man, woman, or child. Every citizen of the United States is of subject status, is a subject, slave, created by the government.
But doesn't the Constitution say they cannot tax your individual wages?
No. No, you have to read my book, because in here I gradually explain little by little how this all came about. The word status, and that's why I named my book first in 1997, I called it A Matter of Status. Because it is your status in society that determines whether you are a taxpayer or not. Okay? And that status is determined by this document called the U.S. Constitution. Now, I call it the U.S. Con. Because
hence the name of the book.
Yes, it is U.S. Con, because it is the greatest con in the history of mankind. Not in a net positive way, in a most negative way. It is, the reason I wrote this is because people like you I hear every day, are on the television, we must restore the Constitution. We must have a new constitutional convention.
But if we had a new constitutional convention, we, the people, could redesign the new government articles to represent all of us and not just that small founding group, couldn't you?
No, you will never have a word to say about it. Just as we, the people, you and me, never had a word to say about it then.
Unless your name was Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson.
Well, Benjamin Franklin, wrote about how, and this is in the National Archives, said that no Jew should ever be allowed into this country. Any man who would say that certainly can't be considered an American, and is not certainly a man that you could trust has any respect for human rights, okay? Any respect for human rights or justice. So I wouldn't trust.
Are you saying, Jack, that our history books that have been approved by thousands of school districts across America have conned us? Have we been conned as a people?
For 220 years.
So we have been conned.
Absolutely. That's why this is called the U.S. Con.
At what website?
jackalpan.com. Now,
well, it's certainly
that's why I wrote
it's giving me food for thought.
Well, that's why I wrote it, because, Bill, I hate to see people like you who really care. You know, the reason that we connected is because we saw a mutual likeness of thought. We shared some thoughts together that were in the same direction. But I wrote this for you and people like you who love America, who are upset with the way the trends are going, all the things that have been happening in the last 10 years since I wrote this book have made America a less safe place than it was in 1997 when I wrote it. More people can read it. That's my goal, is to educate the American people to realize that we have been conned for 220 years. And there is, you see, the other reason I wrote it is because most Americans say this, well, what can I, one person, do about what the government is doing? I can't change it. So a lot of people get upset about what's going on, and they resist and they fight the system. This guy Brown that you talked about that refused to pay his income taxes. Irwin Schiff, who has been in jail so many times for not paying his income taxes. This is a negative, wrong action. It is fighting against something that you eventually become. When you fight against anything, then you become what you fight against.
You think that's why Jesus said, resist not evil?
Yes. Yeah, because evil destroys itself anyhow. If you look throughout the history of mankind, what has happened? In every age, there is a rise and then there's a fall. Why? Because political governments are founded on fraud and force. And that is a violation of the laws of nature. It doesn't work. You cannot fool all the people all the time. Eventually, they wake up. I woke up, and I published this in '97. When people read this, they're going to wake up. And it's not to arouse them to kill the king or chop any heads off or do anything to harm anybody. But what it is, it's about educating your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. And if you teach them what is in this information, gradually, over time, without any bloodshed, the world could change. History would not have to repeat itself.
Because
and we could create a stable civilization, a durable civilization,
with millions of people who learn to become sovereign, self-ruling,
without ruling another, without being ruled by another. There are only three classes of people on this earth. There are the rulers, which are sovereign. And sovereign rulers give themselves immunity from prosecution. Therefore, they can do anything they want, and you cannot harm them, because they are the king. King George Bush is the king, okay? And he can do anything he wants. He's a sovereign. And you, the other class of person, are the ruled, okay? The American citizens are ruled.
Okay, what's the third class of people?
And the third is the self-ruled. The self-ruling. Those are the only three kinds of people there are.
I can see what you're saying, Jack, but I would, I belonged for 30-some years to a political party called the Libertarian Party, and that's the key that they said. Be self-responsible, be self-ruling. Don't go to court. Settle your things outside of court, which is what the New Testament says. Come quickly to agreement with your adversary, lest he take you to the judge, and the judge hand you over to the bailiff, and the bailiff throw you in jail. Settle your things outside the evil government system, and that's basically what you're telling me.
Exactly. But you see, as long as people believe that government, and there are three forms of government on the planet, and I explain it in depth in my book. Political government, economical government, that's the banksters, and then ecclesiastical government. These three forms of government, which is control, that's what government is control. The control of a few over the many. Okay, all these forms of government have failed for 10,000 years of recorded history. They have risen and then fallen. And it will always happen this way. Okay, what I'm saying in my book is that there is an alternative. There is another way.
And you've got the secret. We become sovereign.
But you see, that has to be taught.
But won't the bankers fight this? I mean, the bankers are really control Bush. You say Bush could do anything, but he couldn't. If Bush were to say today, I'm taking us off the Federal Reserve notes, the fiat money created by these private bankers that own the Federal Reserve, and we're going to issue gold and silver coins again and go back on the gold standard.
They would kill him.
Exactly. Bush would be dead before the week's out.
Just like they did with Kennedy. No, I agree with you with that, but that's why... That's why I wrote this tape. Okay, we don't.
Jack, I got to thank you for it. It's been great having you here. People, I recommend you take a look at Jack's book on DVD at this website, jackalpan.com. And maybe Jack has really got the Christian solution, a non-violent solution, which means we won't have to shoot judges, hang judges, decapitate King George Bush. We won't have to go that way if we learn to be sovereign, spelling the sovereign the way Jack does. Jack, thank you so much. I want to give you the last minute to have the last word.
Okay. My book is about a peaceful way for people to educate their children. It took 40 years for Moses to take 3 million slaves out of Egypt and create a nation. That's why he wandered in the desert for 40 years. It doesn't take 40 years to go from Egypt to Israel. You could walk there probably in a week or a month. But he spent 40 years in the desert to create a nation. He had to let the old people die and teach the new people a new way of living, a new way of thinking. That's what this book is about.
People, there you have it. I recommend you get U.S. Con, Top Secret, by retired dentist Jack Alpan.